Painting and Travel visits Bellevue, Iowa along the Mississippi River. Sarah talks with the lockmaster about the workings of the lock, while Roger paints the afternoon glow on the river and two historic button factories.
Welcome to the picturesque small town of Bellevue, Iowa. We decided to spend a couple of days here. And behind me, you'll see Lock and Dam 12. This is where boats that are traveling up from the lower part of the Mississippi can continue many hundred miles to the upper part of the Mississippi by virtue of how the lock works. And the lock master will speak with me a little later on and give me some more information. But I want to show you what Roger has decided to paint. He's just a block down at the end of the park and has found a very interesting old building.
Here along the Mississippi River, there's lots of great subjects to paint. Last night we stopped here and I did this small painting, 8 by 10 inch painting on acrylics. And I like the subject so much, I decided to do another one this evening. I'm using a 9 by 12 inch piece of masonite, and I have a coat of burnt sienna on here just to get rid of the white on here. I have a small selection of brushes, mainly flats and one small pointed brush. And for my paints, I'm using acrylics, and I have titanium white, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, Indian yellow, cadmium yellow light. Then I have 3 earth colors: burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and burnt umber. I also have 2 greens, a sap green and a chromium oxide green. I have a lot more colors on my palette than I usually do, but there's a lot of nuances in here. The lighting last night was especially nice. It had a beautiful glow on these buildings. I don't see it tonight. I hope it's going to appear shortly. I really don't need to draw much on this since I did it last night. I know what the composition is going to be, so I'm just going to use my brush and draw this in with a brush using some blue and brown just to make a dark color. One thing I don't like about the composition here is how the trees here on this hill, there's a hill here with a cliff down here, they make a tangent right on the edge of this building from where I sit. So I think I'm going to lower those trees down to this area here. I could make the trees in that hill go up higher. So I have to do one or the other, make it go up higher or down lower, because I don't want these hills to touch the edge of this building. So I think I'll make it a little bit lower. This is an especially interesting building because these 2 structures here were button factories. And the buttons were made from clamshells, and these doors right down here low on the building, that's where the boats would come in and deliver their catch of clams, and they would stamp out a round button from those clamshells. But I liked it just for the shape of the building. It was a very strong compositional design here. And we've got some nice basic strong shapes as well. Got some squares, some triangle looking areas. Well, I'm going to start by using some light colors back here of this mountain. Must be a lot of moisture in the air. There's a lot of atmosphere because this tends to sort of really fade out back here. I'm going to make some of these areas slightly darker. Here we've got this area of trees right in here. A lot of sunlight is beginning to hit those trees, but I'm going to make this dark to start with, and then since these are acrylics, they'll dry very fast, and I'll put some of these lighter colors over this dark after it dries for a few moments. I really have to hurry here because the sun is going down, but that's what I liked about this, the nice lighting that it had. But As always, the lighting disappears very quickly on this time of day. I'm looking at that building, and I'm going to mix a warm tone since it's sort of a yellowish brick building, but I'm going to put some cerulean blue in it to give it some atmosphere between me and this building. Even though it's not far away, I want to try and keep a little bit of atmosphere here to create a nice mood if I can. And we'll put in this really dark area of grasses here. What I'm trying to do is just cover the area, get it all covered, and create a foundation for myself that I can build on. I like to start with my darks most of the time. That's what I've done here. The end of this building is lighter than this side of the building, and the reason that is because all the water down here is reflecting light up onto this side of the building. Now that's going to change also in a few minutes as the sun starts to dip. Because last night, as I look at this painting, we had a nice glow across here, and then the front of this building was darker. Every situation is different, and the light, of course, changes. Really no telling about this. 1 minute it's one color, and another minute it's another color. It does make it rather difficult to paint on location sometimes, because things just do change so very fast. I'm going to take some cerulean blue and yellow ochre. See if that gives us a good color for that sky. I think that's about right. I want to warm that sky up even more, a little more yellow ochre. Now, one key to painting like this is to get everything covered fast, as I said earlier. So I'm trying to use a large brush for this, and I'm loading the brush up with paint, and I'm not dabbing it, I'm not applying the paint in little tiny strokes to get it covered. I'm acting more like someone that would be painting a house or a barn. I'm just loading that brush up and putting it on there very thick, just so it covers. I'm not fussing with it at all. Now, if this is not the right color, I may have to go back and change it. That's okay, but at least I give it my best shot here as far as what value and what color this should be. Now, this is already dry. That's just been a matter of a few moments. So I can drag this sky down over this tree area, and this dark green here will not mix with the sky. And that's a nice advantage of using the acrylics. We have a cliff right in here where this drops off. I like that nice shape that it gives me. I'm going to make this a little warmer down in this area than up in here. So I'm taking some yellow ochre, and I'm going to make this slightly warmer in this area. So we'll go from a warmer color to a cooler color, maybe a little bit lighter too. I'm going to tackle this water right now, make this blue, and I'll put some warmth in it with some burnt sienna. Again, I'll load my brush up and get this covered because we're fighting some time here. Now, this water doesn't have to be quite as opaque as the sky because there's a lot of ripples and all sorts of things going on in that water. So if some of this burnt sienna look shows through, it will be okay. I also have this little spray bottle, which I always bring with me, and that helps to keep the paint wet a little longer. But the main thing it does is when I spray the board like this, it allows me to flow these paints over one another more easily. Okay, I'm going to work on that mountain back there again. I don't like the color of that particularly well, but it's a good start. I'll just build on that color, and I'll just use the edge of my brush and scumble some of these colors in there. And this rough brushwork will probably remain in the finished painting, just using the edge of my brush here. Pick up some more cerulean blue, add that right in here, because I am seeing a lot of atmosphere between where I'm sitting and that hill over there. There's a little cliff area right in here. Maybe I can just dab in just an indication of where those cliffs are. This is very warm here, and I'm going to take a cooler color with the cerulean blue and just start laying some washes over this with some different colors. Here I'm going to use this blue here, make that slightly cooler. Still working with my big shapes. I have some beautiful greens down here. They're quite dark because they're not catching the sunlight any longer, so I have to keep these greens dark even though they're very brilliant. I don't want to put too much yellow or white in them because then they'll appear to have too much sunlight on them. And we've got some very dark greens up here in the bank. If you have trouble with greens, because greens are a hard color to work with, try using some red with your greens. If you're not getting quite the green you want, add some red to it. See what happens. That's what I'm doing here. There's a vine or something growing up the side of that building there. Right between these two buildings, there's some more greenery. Add that. That's a nice touch because that really separates these two shapes. Okay, now I've got this area of trees back here. Now those, I made that very dark, but now the light is really starting to hit those from the side. So I'm going to take my Indian yellow, a couple yellows here, a touch of green, and I'll start putting in some highlights or some lighter colors where the light is starting to hit these trees. Just start to lighten that. I go cautiously when I lighten something. Way back in the distance, we have another hill area, so I've got my cerulean blue and white. It's mixing in with some of these other colors on the palette, gray it a little, but we'll put that mountain way back there. That's a nice feature, that distant hill. I'll wipe my brush off like this, and I'll hit the edge of this lightly and soften that edge. We're not too far from the road here, and it goes past these two buildings, and this road comes down the hill right here, and I'm using the edge of my brush. There's some other houses or establishments there on this road, and I can see them, so I'm going to put in just a few little areas that look like buildings just by making some square areas, and then maybe a highlight here or there. I think I'll lighten this road even more. It's really getting hit by the sunlight. I'll grab my blues, some warm colors here, burnt siennas. I'll spray that board. I'll add this reflection down here. This is all dry. Now this reflection from the far building is just not showing up very much. It's being interfered with the waves in the water, but I'm going to put an indication of it in here. I can just sort of comes and goes, this reflection. Just back and forth horizontal strokes is basically what I'm doing here. There's no particular pattern to this water tonight because the wind picks up and it dies down, so I can't really put my finger on any one pattern. There's a door right here, and it's a white door, but of course I want to keep that very dark because it's in shadow. If I were to make it white, it would just jump out, which would not be very good. So we'll just keep that about the same value as this wall, but slightly lighter. See, this is dark, this is slightly lighter, but it's not nearly as light as the sky. You also have some windows up here. I'll put this same light color in here, and those will be the window frames. We'll come back in a few moments and we'll put in some of the windows. I'll let that dry a moment or two, and then we'll put the dark windows on there. And then there's some doors down here. I don't think these doors are functioning anymore. I think they've been sealed up because of Mississippi River flooding, but they're still there. I don't think they're used. So we'll indicate a few of those. There's also a door right on the side here. This is all bricked up now. Now the light is starting to really change. The light is starting to come over the ends of these buildings here, cause some shadows. This building is starting to lighten up. I think I'll work on these greens. I remember last night there was some brilliant green hitting this bush right in here. I think I'll add that in there. And right at the top of the hill, we've got some brilliant green because the sun is still hitting that right there. So that'll probably be the lightest and brightest green we have. I'm going to warm up the edge of this building now since that light is hitting it. I was sort of anticipating that. And right here, top of the building, we've got that sun hitting it. Oops, looks like I'm going to lose my windows there, but that's all right. Just going to scumble these colors on there, see if I can get that late afternoon glow. Oh, this is really changing its complexion now. This is really getting quite light right in here. This is going to disappear as fast as it's appeared, I think. So I'm going to try to work quickly here. I may not get all the detail in here tonight with this painting, but I'll try and capture the mood as I see it. The bank of this here is very warm, and we've got more of this bank down in here. It's catching a few highlights now and again. And then right at the edge of the bank, it gets very dark where the rocks and things are very wet. See some of these fall colors starting to appear over here in these trees. And I'll take some of my dark color here, also work on this reflection. Here we have the dark windows. I'll indicate those right now. There's a number of iron rods that are put in the wall. I can see them all along here. They're sort of staggered in various positions. Those have big square plates on them, and those iron rods go through the wall, and it's really holding the building together because it's quite an old building. Well, I sure like the way the light is coming over this, so I think I'm going to keep lightening this area some. I'll spray this, and that way my paint will easily flow over here. I don't know if it's a good idea or not to try and keep up with the light at this time of day. The only reason I did anticipate this because I did the painting last night. This is a very beautiful time of day to work and paint, but also very challenging. I'm going to do the same thing to the front of this building. Is going to put a wash over this to give it some more texture. Down here towards the base of the building, I don't know if it's because of water damage in the past or whatever, but it tends to be somewhat darker, which is good because this dark area here of the grass blends into the value of the building. I don't like the color of this mountain back here. I'm squinting my eyes and looking at it. It looks about right here, but it just doesn't feel right. And so many times these, paintings are really so much about how it feels. And even though if I compare this value and that color to what's out there, if it doesn't look good in the painting, then it's not good. It needs to be changed. So I'm going to try and work on this mountain back here. I think just by leaving the colors that are already on here and just maybe building over these with a different color and value and leaving some of this color behind, maybe I can improve it. Towards the top of the mountain now, some of the trees are catching some sunlight right up here. This water is changing moment by moment. There's not a lot of color in this water. Maybe make this a light patch back there, because I did see that a little while ago. Some sun or reflections or something were hitting that pretty hard back there with some light areas. Also right on the shore, right in front of this dark area here where the water tends to gently lap up against the rocks there is a little bit lighter tone. Boy, now the light is really hitting that in a real beautiful way. Oh, I can't resist. I've got to put some of that hard light that's coming across there using basically yellow ochre and white. And I'll drag this over what I already have on here very carefully so some of this will still show through. In other words, some of the painting I did underneath will still come through and leave me with that texture that I like all in here. Paintings like this near sunset or at sunset, in just a matter of moments, once that sun goes down, boom, it's all gone. It happens that quick. So I don't know how far I'll get here before that really happens. Now we got this hard light coming right across here. I'll pick up some cerulean blue. It tends to make this area a bit cooler as I see it. As this warmed up, this area seemed to get slightly bluer. Well, it's been a pleasure sitting in this park here in Bellevue, Iowa, here on the Mississippi River, painting these two old structures that were once button factories. It's been a pleasure. So the light has kind of beaten me again. It's getting a little bit too dark to work. So we'll go back into the studio now, and I'll try and finish this from what I've been observing in the last 20 minutes or so.
This is Bill Hainstock, and he's the lockmaster here. Bill, what's happening at the moment?
Currently, we're locking a towboat and 15 barges with the commodity inside the barges of cement.
Bill, this use of the lock moves a tremendous amount of cargo that doesn't have to go by truck.
That's correct. The 15 barges that is being pushed by this towboat is the equivalent of 900 semis. So if you could imagine 900 semis going past this facility every hour and a half, that takes a lot of stress off of our roads, and we could move a lot of commodity using towboats and barges up and down the Mississippi River.
And the pilot for this is very skilled, because I notice there's not much leeway on either side of the barge.
That's correct. The pilots, they have a lot of years in running those craft. Our chamber that they're pushing these barges into is 110 feet wide, and their barges are 105 feet wide. So they only have 2.5 foot on each side, which isn't a lot of room, but they slip them right in here and with their skill, and they can do that rather well.
Now, the way the lock works is that this part of the Mississippi is a bit lower.
Well, back in 1930, the U.S. Congress authorized a 9-foot channel for the Mississippi River. In order to maintain a 9-foot channel, they put in dams. Well, if you put in a dam, you can't navigate between the upper and lower pool, so they had to install locks.
And do smaller ships also need to use it?
Oh, sure. We lock passenger boats with tourists on them, pleasure craft, fishing boats, canoes, kayaks. They are all use our facility here.
Is there any charge for it?
There's no charge for the canoers or the small craft, other than yours and my taxes. The towboat industry does pay a fuel usage tax similar to a road use tax.
Now, once the boat gets to the upper part of the Mississippi there, just on the other side, how many hundreds of miles can it go?
It goes from St. Louis to St. Paul, whatever that mileage is, but it takes about 5 days to make that trip one way, and then they either drop off their commodity and pick up another commodity, or bring down empty barges and travel 5 days down to St. Louis again. Below St. Louis, there are not any more locks and dams, so the water's deep enough below St. Louis that they can go down to the port of New Orleans, and then the commodity is shipped all over the world.
That's pretty exciting.
Yes, it is.
Products that go all over the world have come up or down the Mississippi.
Yes, a lot of the products that come out of the Midwest are corn and soybeans, and we import a lot of coal for our power plants here in this area.
We drove across the state of Iowa and saw lots of corn and lots of soybeans. And so this is a perfect setup. Mississippi's right here. Load up the bins and
feed
head
the
out.
world, yes.
Feed the world, yes. I like that. We saw a picturesque tourist boat the other day, and it looked very nice. You know, you kind of think about how it might have been 100 years ago.
Yes.
Traveling on that, what fun.
Yes, that was the Twilight, the motor vessel Twilight, and go on board, and they have meals and good old Mississippi River entertainment.
Well, thanks very much for speaking with me. I really learned quite a lot, and I just think it's going to be wonderful to spend the day looking out here.
Yes. Enjoy.
Okay, thanks.
Well, here we are back in the studio, and very little needed to be done to finish this painting. Here are the few steps I took. I repainted the sky. It was somewhat blotchy, and I just put another coat over that to make a nice solid area of paint here. I used my cerulean blue and yellow ochre and white, and down here at the horizon I warmed it up with a touch of alizarin crimson. A few of these areas with the grass, I made these more intense where the sun was hitting them. But I mainly concentrated on this area here where the sun was cutting across this building and making this hard edge. With the dry brush, I scumbled some more warm colors on here using some yellow ochres, some cadmium yellow lights, and some alizarin crimson, making this very warm. I didn't make that a solid color because I wanted to leave what texture I had in here and describe it even more. To finish this painting, I sharpened up some of the details, such as these posts here and a few of these buildings, and I added a touch of white right across the tops of these windows. Sarah and I enjoyed our visit to Bellevue, Iowa on the Mississippi River. This small town was very friendly and welcoming, and we enjoyed it very much. A lot of nice things to paint there.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.